would conflict with the definition in the Constitution, and strangely, even seeks to include volunteers, consultants, and persons who render any form of services to be public officers. The implication of that is immense. In paragraph 4, Honorable Speaker, in direct contradiction of the separation of powers and the Powers and Privileges Act and our own standing orders that has made this House self-regulating, in its wisdom, this House passed an Act of Parliament, the Powers and Privileges Act. It then also passed the standing orders and gave power to the Powers and Privileges Committee to deal with the issues in terms of conflict of interest. This bill seeks to yank that from Parliament, to yank it and assign it to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, so that the Commission would then end up regulating what even we as members of Parliament do in this Parliament. That is wrong. Every branch must be self-regulating, just the way the judiciary is and ought to be self-regulating by the Judicial Service Commission. We are self-regulating through yourself, Mr. Speaker, as the chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission, and then the committee. Mr. Speaker, paragraph 5 then does something very strange. Other than trying to regulate all public officers and state officers, this bill then singles out in clause 11 only members of Parliament. It does not single out anyone else. It does not single out cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, judges, only members of Parliament, almost as if this bill is tailored to focus on members of Parliament in a very unfair way. Mr. Speaker, in clause 11.2, which is in paragraph 8 of my letter, it does something very strange. Other than requiring members of Parliament to declare whenever there's any issue of conflict of interest, it then says that wherever such a declaration is made, no member of Parliament can participate in any debate or discussion where they would benefit. The implication of that, Mr. Speaker, is that there would be no one to legislate on any issues affecting members of Parliament, because we'd all be in conflict of interest. There would be no one, and we would not even be able to deliberate on the NGAF, the NGCDF bill as we are deliberating today. There would be no one to discuss the question of salaries or pensions or car grants, because we would all be declared to have been in conflict under clause 11.2, and therefore unable to discuss anything around that. Mr. Speaker, in paragraph 10, we raise the issue in terms of declaration of income, assets, and liabilities. And this bill not only requires a public officer, like a member of Parliament, to declare their income, asset, and liability, but then it even extends to their spouse and dependent children, so that the Honorable Wanjala, who I think has just walked out, and who by his own admission is a serious polygamist, would then be required to ask his wives for full disclosure of what they owe and own, and to include in that declaration. This is a breach of Article 31 of the Constitution, and especially because once you've declared, it then becomes information held by the state, which anyone can access. The Honorable Speaker, I have raised 15 different points. I do not need to read them again because you are well seized of them. I urge that it be considered by yourself, Honorable Speaker, in addition to the report of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, so that we can seriously reconsider this bill, because this bill has the potential of harming ourselves. Self-preservation has always been the most basic human instinct. Let us not be a house that is given to self-infliction of pain. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Tienda Amolo. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me first thank Senior Counsel Tienda Amolo for those issues, and indeed confirm that the Honorable Tienda Amolo did write a letter, very detailed letter with all those 13 or 14 issues, and he did copy my office, and I remember, Honorable Speaker, discussing the same with yourself and the chair of the JLAC committee, who unfortunately is not here, but the vice chair, Honorable Mutusa, is here. And we have further discussed all the issues that were raised by the Honorable Otiende in his letter with the Chair and the Vice Chair of the Jailer Committee. And I believe, Honorable Speaker, given an opportunity, since the Chair is away, the Vice Chair should be able to appraise us on where fast they are in terms of looking at those issues among us, many other issues that came up during public participation, and which, as has been indicated by Senior Counsel, already some of those issues are being addressed by the Jailer Committee. Honorable Speaker, it's also worth mentioning to the Honorable Otiende Omolo that in the House Business Committee this morning, we did agree to stand down that conflict of interest bill from this afternoon sitting for Committee of the Whole. First, to allow the Jailer Committee to complete the work that they were already doing, to maybe later tomorrow or the day after, whenever time will allow, and when the House Business Committee will be able to schedule business. But Honorable Speaker, just to note that as much as I may agree with the Honorable Otiende on a number of things, touching on, especially on definitions of who a relative is, who a public officer is, because that which is provided, explicitly provided for in the Constitution, we can not then seek to redefine it in statute, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the country, and any other law that then we enact that is in conflict with the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, when I was studying commercial law in my CPA, we were told that it becomes ultra vires, and therefore any such definition that goes against what is provided for in the Constitution then will be ultra vires the Constitution and become null and void. However, Honorable Speaker, the definitions like a relative, the Constitution does not define who your relative is, but then it begs a moral question as to how far do you define who your relative is as a public officer? Your mother-in-law, your sister-in-law, some that you may not even know, if they are doing business, Honorable Speaker, and they don't eat in your house, they don't depend on your pay as a public officer, they have no direct relation with you, then can you then say that there is a conflict of interest between that distant relative and yourself as a public officer? Therefore, those are issues, Honorable Speaker, that are already before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, of which I believe the Honorable Otiende Omolo is a member. I was hoping he would indicate where they are as a committee, but I am informed he was not in the meeting today, this morning, and therefore I want to believe that JLAC will be able to appraise us on the addendum they are doing that is touching on